Hello friends, my name is Masood. Today we shall discuss about topic define scope. Friend, today's topic is very interesting, especially if you have interest in project management or you are planning to give exam or PMP in near future. So let's start, friend. First of all, I request to please subscribe to my YouTube channel and click on the bell option as well so that my videos can reach to you, and also you can follow me on the Facebook page as well. Friend, define a scope is basically a process which we have taken it from the PMBOK guide, project management body of knowledge. Project management body of knowledge or PMBOK guide is basically a book which contains all the best practices and the uh, industry standards for project management. This book issued by PMI, Project Management Institute, or PMI is basically a non-profit based organization based in USA, and a very popular very recognized certificate of PMP is also issued by PMI. And uh, one of the knowledge area called as a scope management is basically one of the knowledge areas defined in the PMBOK guide, and one process from the scope management is define scope. Define scope means, friend, defining the scope, the boundaries of the scope, boundaries of the project which we are going to deliver, and the things which are part of the scope which we are going to deliver, and the things which are not part of the scope. Okay, so these two things are very important whenever we are scoping a project. So defining the scope is a crucial process that involves determining and documenting the project boundaries, deliverables, constraints, and objectives. Constraints means the limitations. Limitations means, like for example, the time is a constraint. That means you cannot beyond that time. For example, the project must have to be completed in 6 months. Cost is another constraint. That means you cannot go beyond that limit. For example, 5,000 is the cost limit. Objectives means the expectations and the requirement what customer wants to achieve from the delivery of the project. Friend, the primary purpose of the define scope process is to establish a clear understanding of what the project will accomplish and what it will not. Basically, this helps in preventing scope creep and ensuring that the project stays on track and providing a basis for making project related decisions. Here, remember, friend, one thing, that scope creep, whenever we talk about a scope creep, basically we are talking about the additional work which is not part of the scope, and normally it's become added into the scope of work, or it's basically demanded by the customer, which are basically not part of the work, part of the scope, signed scope, and we have to it becomes a part by mistakenly. For example, let me give you an example here. For example, 5 modules were needs to be developed as per the scope of work, signed scope of work. However, once the project started and customer says that he need one more module, by mistakenly it was not checked that the additional one more module was not part of a scope, and the team started work on the sixth module or the additional module. So basically will be considered as a scope creep, that things are adding into the project which were not part of the scope of work. Now, friend, if we talk about the key steps in the define scope process, one is the collect requirement. Collect requirement means that when the project started and you are basically defining the scope of work, you have to basically sit with the customer, okay, gather and document the requirements of the project stakeholders. Stakeholders are the persons who are having some interest in the project. Stakeholder, these are the two words, stakeholder, that means person who has some stake, or positive or negative stake in the project. You engage with different parties, like the customer, the internal management, the functional management, okay, technical experts, and try to, especially we you sit with the customer and try to understand their expectations, their needs, their pain points, what are the constraints, limitations in terms of time and cost, and define the functional and the non-functional requirements. Now here the functional means the requirements which belongs to user, like for example, you need to develop a e-commerce solution through which customer can do the payments through debit card or credit card. This is a basically the functional requirement. The non-functional requirement example, like for example, the e-commerce site should be open in all browsers, either it's Chrome, either it's Internet Explorer. So this is a non-functional requirement. Then friend, define the project scope statement. Project scope statement basically outlines the project objective, deliverables, constraints, assumptions, and acceptance criteria. Here remember friend, the first thing, deliverable means the things which you are going to deliver means, for example, let me give you an example. For example, um, you are making a e-commerce mobile application. So mobile application is a deliverable. You are saying that you will give a Android mobile application, so this is a deliverable. Then the assumptions mean that the things which you are assuming that it will be available, that it will be true. Okay, so this is very interesting, important topic. Then acceptance criteria means that the criteria at which the deliverables, the things will be accepted by the customer. Here a friend clearly articulate the what the project will achieve and what is beyond its scope boundaries, that which is not part of the scope. Also the scope statement must have to be signed off by the customer properly. Next step is the create work breakdown structure, WBS. WBS means dividing the project into smaller pieces. It is called as a divide and rule concept here. Like rather than focusing on the whole project, divide the project into smaller chunks at which you can basically estimate the work. So basically it's a hierarchical and organized structure known as work breakdown structure. Break down the project into phases, tasks and work packages for better planning and control, and you can properly estimate it. That is called as work breakdown structure. Then validate the scope. Validate means that you have established, you have made the scope statement, you have made the work breakdown structure. Now basically sit with the stakeholder, especially with the customer, to ensure that the scope meets their expectations. This is very important. Like for example, you are expecting that 5 modules are needed, but when you sit with the customer you realize that one more module is needed. So basically there should not be any discrepancy, or there should not be any gap in the understanding, and if there is any discrepancy or concerns, so you must have to address through feedbacks, revisions, etc. before starting the project actually. Next is the control scope. Control scope means implement a formalized change control process to manage changes to the project scope. Like you have a signed scope of work document, and if there are any changes coming in the scope, so obviously it will have an impact on the time, cost and resources. So if there are any changes in the signed scope of work, it must be considered as a change, and it should be managed through the change control process. So make informed decisions on whether whether to approve or reject the scope changes. If it's approved, it will become a part of the scope, and the scope documents will be updated. Next is the scope baseline. Scope baseline means establish a scope baseline that includes the approved project scope statements, WBS and associated documentation. The scope baseline serves as a reference point throughout the project to assess performance and manage changes as well. So by completing the defined scope process thoroughly, project managers and team can create a solid foundation for successful project execution. It helps in minimizing misunderstandings, managing expectations, and providing a basis for effective project planning, monitoring and control. So friend, thanks a lot for watching the video. I hope you like this video. If you like it, please share it with the friends and colleagues, and thanks a lot for watching the video.